The boot connected with her ribs for the third time, and Lieutenant Harper Kane didn't fight back. She couldn't. Not yet. "Weakling!" Sergeant Morrison shouted, his spit hitting her face. "This is what America sends now? A 100-pound girl playing soldier?" The other contractors laughed, their voices echoing off the concrete walls of the detention cell. It was March 15th, 2024, in an abandoned Soviet-era compound 40 kilometers outside Tiraspol, Moldova, and Harper had exactly 72 hours before they sold her to the highest bidder. But they didn't know what she really was, and that ignorance was about to cost them everything. Before we show you how a Navy SEAL turned captivity into a tactical advantage, hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from, because this story went further than anyone expected. Now let's show you what happened when they made the mistake of calling her weak. The zip ties cut into Harper's wrists, but she didn't pull against them. That's what amateurs did. Amateurs fought the restraints immediately, wasted energy, telegraphed panic. Harper Kane was a lot of things, but amateur wasn't one of them. "Check her again," Commander Victor Brandt ordered, his accent still carrying traces of Boston despite 15 years in Eastern Europe. He stood with his arms crossed, watching his men pat down the small woman they'd dragged from the compound's server room. "I want everything: phones, weapons, transmitters." Morrison's hands moved roughly across Harper's tactical jacket, finding nothing. Because there was nothing to find anymore. She'd dumped her primary gear during the chase, keeping only what they'd expect a low-level contractor to carry. Civilian ID badge, generic smartphone, pocket flashlight, 20 euros in cash. "She's clean," Morrison said, sounding almost disappointed. "Just a tech girl. Probably got lost looking for a bathroom." Harper let her head hang forward, hair covering her face. Let them see exhaustion. Let them see fear. Let them see exactly what they expected to see when they looked at a 5'4" woman who weighed 120 pounds soaking wet. "Lost?" Brandt stepped closer. "In a restricted server room? At 3 in the morning?" "I was told..." Harper's voice came out shaky, perfect. "I was told to download the quarterly reports. My supervisor said..." "Your supervisor?" Brandt crouched in front of her, studying her face. "And who exactly is your supervisor?" Harper gave him a name, a real name from a real company, one that legitimately contracted with facilities like this for IT support. She'd done her homework. More importantly, she'd lived that cover for 6 weeks before tonight, showing up every Tuesday and Thursday to run system diagnostics, always leaving before dark, always staying in her lane. Until tonight. "Marcus Pohl," she whispered. "He manages the IT division. He said the reports were due tomorrow, and I needed to..." "At 3 a.m.? Morrison grabbed her chin, forcing her head up. "You expect us to believe that?" "I don't expect anything," Harper said, and she let tears well up in her eyes. Not hard. Fear had a biochemistry you could trigger if you knew how. She'd learned that in SEER training: survival, evasion, resistance, escape. The instructors had broken her down to nothing, then taught her how to rebuild herself into something that could bend without breaking. "I just want to go home." Morrison laughed. It was a cruel sound, the kind men made when they'd forgotten what mercy felt like. "Home? Sweetheart, you just became an intelligence asset. You're not going anywhere." Brandt stood, pulling a phone from his jacket. "Get Dr. Cross. Tell her we have a guest who needs evaluation." Harper's pulse jumped, but she controlled it. Breathing steady, heart rate managed. This was the first test. Not the restraints, not the capture, the categorization. If they thought she was valuable, they'd be careful. If they thought she was disposable, she had maybe 12 hours before things got exponentially worse. "Sir, she's nobody." Morrison's boot tapped against Harper's leg, not quite a kick, More like testing merchandise. Just some scared IT girl who walked into the wrong room. We could let her go, tell her to keep her mouth shut. No. Brant's voice carried finality. We let nobody go. Not until we know what she saw. I didn't see anything! Harper's voice cracked perfectly. Please, I have a daughter. She's 6. She needs me. Please. The lie landed exactly how she wanted it to. Morrison's expression shifted from cruel amusement to dismissive contempt. Mothers weren't threats. Mothers were leverage. A daughter? Brant tilted his head. Then you should have thought about her before you stuck your nose where it didn't belong. They dragged Harper to her feet. She stumbled, deliberately awkward, letting them support most of her weight. Let them think she was weak. Let them think her legs barely worked from fear. She counted steps as they moved her through the corridor. 18 to the first turn, 43 to the stairwell. Down 2 flights. Temperature dropped 6 degrees. Moisture in the air. Basement level, probably underground. The detention cell was exactly what she'd expected. Concrete walls, single drain in the floor, metal ring bolted to the wall at shoulder height. Morrison shoved her toward it while another contractor, she cataloged him, mid-30s, Russian accent, shoulder holster, wedding ring, attached her zip ties to the wall ring with a carabiner clip. Comfortable? Morrison asked. Harper didn't answer. Her arms were stretched above her head, not quite painful yet, but she knew the position. Stress position. Give it a few hours, and the shoulders would scream. Give it a full day, and nerve damage became a real possibility. I asked you a question, weakling. There was that word. The one they'd use to define her. The one they'd repeat until they believed it themselves. Yes, Harper whispered. I'm comfortable. Morrison backhanded her. Not hard enough to cause real damage, just hard enough to establish dominance. You speak when I tell you to speak. Understand? Harper tasted blood. She'd bitten her cheek on impact, deliberately, because blood sold fear better than anything else. Yes. Yes, what? Yes, sir. He smiled. Fast learner. Maybe you'll last longer than the others. The words hung in the air like a corpse from a rope. Others. Plural. This wasn't a one-time operation. This was infrastructure. Morrison left. The Russian contractor stayed, leaning against the wall, scrolling through his phone like he was bored already. Harper counted his breathing. 15 breaths per minute. Relaxed. Not expecting trouble. She rotated her wrists slowly, testing the zip ties. Standard law enforcement grade, rated for about 400 pounds of tensile strength. Her wrists were small. Years of people underestimating her had taught her to use that. If she dislocated her thumb, she could slip the ties. Painful, but doable. Not yet. You really have kid? The Russian's English was rough, but functional. Harper looked at him. Yes. How old? 6. He nodded, something almost sympathetic crossing his face. I have daughter, 8 years. She lives with her mother in Volgograd. Harper filed it away. Separated father. Potential guilt point. Possible leverage if she needed it later. What's her name? Harper asked softly. Katya. He said it like he missed her. Then his expression hardened. But I do my job anyway. You understand? Nothing personal. Just work. I understand. He went back to his phone. Harper went back to counting. Heartbeats, breaths, seconds. The distance from her position to the door, the height of the ceiling, the diameter of the drain in the floor. 43 minutes later, the door opened again. Dr. Elena Cross walked in like she owned the space, which she probably did. Tall, sharp-featured, carrying a leather portfolio that looked expensive. Her clothes were too nice for a black site detention facility. Designer slacks, silk blouse, shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Leave us," she told the Russian. He didn't argue. The door closed with a heavy metallic sound that Harper recognized. Reinforced, probably blast-rated. This compound had been built to withstand sieges. "Harper Kane." Dr. Cross opened her portfolio, pulling out a photograph. Harper's own face stared back at her. Her real face, the one from her military ID, not the civilian contractor disguise. "Age 28, graduated Annapolis with honors. SEAL qualification course, class 347. Direct commission to Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Current assignment, classified." Harper's blood went cold, but she kept her face blank. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Cross stepped closer. "Because I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. I think you walked into that server room for a very specific reason, and I think you found what you were looking for before Morrison's patrol caught you." "I'm an IT contractor." "You're a Navy SEAL." Cross's voice was clinical, detached, like she was diagnosing a patient. "And not just any SEAL. You're signals intelligence, which means you weren't here to steal data. You were here to map our network, find our communications, identify our operation." Harper said nothing. Silence was safer than lies when someone already knew the truth. Cross circled her slowly. "Your team thinks you're compromised. They're probably already writing the after-action report, classifying you as MIA presumed KIA. They won't come for you. Not here. Not for one operator. The political fallout would be catastrophic." "Then why keep me alive?" "Because you're worth more alive than dead." Cross stopped directly in front of her. "We sell information to people who pay very well for it, and the Navy SEAL with classified knowledge? That's a premium product." Harper felt her tactical assessment shifting. This wasn't just unlawful detention. This was human trafficking with a military intelligence wrapper. "How many?" she asked quietly. "How many what?" "How many others? How many people have you sold?" Cross smiled. It was the worst thing Harper had seen all night. "Does it matter?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I want to know how many lives I'm avenging when I kill you." The words came out flat, factual, without bravado. Harper wasn't making a threat. She was stating an operational objective. Cross's smile widened. "You think you're going to escape? Harper, look at yourself. You're chained to a wall in an underground cell in a country that doesn't acknowledge your existence. Your own government won't rescue you. Your team has already moved on. You have nothing." "I have time." "Time?" Cross laughed. "You have 72 hours. Then you're on a plane to Minsk, and from there you disappear into whatever hole our buyers choose. Some will want information. Some will want propaganda. Some will want—" She let the sentence trail off, the implications filling the silence worse than any spoken threat. Harper tested the zip ties again, subtly, while maintaining eye contact. 72 hours. That's more time than you think." "Is it?" Cross stepped back toward the door. "Let me show you what time means here." She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward Harper. Video footage played. Another cell, similar to this one. Another prisoner, male, military age, American uniform stripped away, same stress position Harper was in now. The timestamp showed 2 weeks ago. "Lieutenant Marcus Webb," Cross narrated. "Army intelligence. Lasted 6 days before he broke. Gave us everything. Network protocols, dead drops, handler names. Then we sold him to a group in Chechnya. I hear they're still using him for propaganda videos." Harper watched the screen, watched Webb's face cycle through defiance, exhaustion, despair. She memorized his prisoner number, visible on a placard in the frame. Someone would need that information for the recovery file. Cross swiped to another video. Captain Jennifer Ortiz, Air Force, 4 days. She tried to escape on day 3. Morrison caught her before she reached the stairs. After that, she told us everything we asked. Another swipe. Sergeant First Class David Park, Marines, 2 days. He was less resilient. Harper counted 9 videos total. 9 prisoners. 9 people who'd been exactly where she was now. Do you see a pattern, Lieutenant Kane? Cross's voice was soft, almost gentle. Everyone breaks. The only variable is how long it takes. So I'm going to give you a choice. You can tell me what you found in that server room right now, and I'll make sure your remaining time here is tolerable. Or you can try to be a hero, and I'll let Morrison have his fun. He enjoys his work. Too much, honestly. But he's effective. Harper looked at the phone, then at Cross. I want to see them. See who? The others. The ones you're still holding. You showed me the ones you already sold. But your operation is ongoing, which means you have current inventory. Cross's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Why would you want that? Because if I'm going to be inventory, I want to know what shelf I'm on. The answer was perfect. Defeated enough to be believable, curious enough to seem human. Cross considered it, then nodded slowly. Later, after you've had time to think about your situation, 24 hours in that position should clarify your priorities. She left. The door locked. The lights stayed on. Another tactic, sensory manipulation, disrupting circadian rhythms. Harper was alone. She counted to 300, making sure Cross wasn't coming back immediately. Then she started working the zip ties in earnest. Not trying to break them yet, just testing tolerances, finding weak points, understanding the mechanics. Her shoulders already ached. That was fine. Pain was information. It told you what your body could endure and for how long. She counted breaths, counted heartbeats, counted the possibilities. 72 hours. Morrison thought she was weak. Cross thought she was inventory. Brandt thought she was leverage. They were all wrong. Harper Kane was a weapon that had just been handed 72 hours to plan, prepare, and execute. And in that time, she was going to learn everything about this compound, everyone in it, and every vulnerability in their operation. Then she was going to burn it to the ground. But first, she needed them to keep underestimating her. Keep thinking she was a weakling who cried about her imaginary daughter. Keep believing she was just another prisoner waiting to break. Because the longer they believed that, the more they'd tell her, the more they'd show her, the more they'd make the critical mistake of thinking she was helpless. Harper closed her eyes and started cataloging everything she'd seen since capture. Guard rotations, door positions, camera locations, the 9-minute gap Cross had mentioned in her interrogation about network protocols. That meant their surveillance had holes, brief windows where movements wouldn't be recorded. 17 hours later, the Russian guard returned with water and a protein bar. He unclipped Harper's restraints long enough for her to eat, watching her carefully. "You have family?" she asked, her voice hoarse from dehydration. "I told you. Daughter." "Do you think she's proud of what you do?" His jaw tightened. "I think she likes eating. I think she likes her school. I think she doesn't ask questions about how I pay for those things." "But if she did ask," Harper pressed gently, "what would you tell her?" "I would tell her the world is not fair. I would tell her survival requires compromise. Is that what you call this? Compromise? He didn't answer. He finished giving her water, reclipped the restraints, and left without another word. But Harper saw it. The hesitation, the flicker of doubt. Not much, not enough to bank on, but something. She was building a map, not just of the facility, but of the people, their weaknesses, their pressure points, their breaking points. Because when the moment came, she wouldn't just escape. She'd dismantle them. 29 hours into captivity, Harper's shoulders had gone from burning to numb. That was dangerous. Nerve compression could become permanent if she stayed in the stress position much longer, but she couldn't show weakness by asking for relief. So she did what SEALs did when the body started failing. She compartmentalized the pain into a box, labeled it non-critical, and focused on what mattered. The guard rotations had a pattern. The Russian came every 6 hours with water. Morrison checked in randomly, but always between 2 and 4 in the morning, his power trip hours, when he thought sleep deprivation would make her more vulnerable. Cross visited twice daily, morning and evening, like a doctor making rounds. And she'd been right about the cameras. Harper had spent 12 hours tracking the red indicator lights in the corridor outside her cell door. They blinked in sequence, sweeping coverage, but there was a 9-second gap every 17 minutes when the camera repositioned. 9 seconds wasn't much, but 9 seconds repeated was opportunity. The door opened. Morrison again, right on schedule. "Morning, Weakling." He carried a bottle of water, but he didn't offer it immediately. "How are those shoulders feeling?" "Fine," Harper lied. "Fine." He laughed. "You know what I like about you? You're stubborn. Most of them cry by now, beg, promise things they can't deliver." He uncapped the water, took a drink himself, then held it just out of her reach. "But you just sit there like you're waiting for something." "I'm waiting for you to get bored and leave." His smile vanished. "You think you're smart? You think that mouth is going to save you?" "I think you need me intact enough to sell. So no, you're not going to damage the merchandise." "You're just going to wave that water around and pretend you have power you don't actually have?" Morrison's hand moved fast, but Harper was faster. She saw the telegraph in his shoulder, the micro-adjustment in his stance. When his palm came toward her face, she'd already shifted her head 6 inches left. His hand hit concrete wall instead of her cheek. He howled, cradling his knuckles. "You bitch!" "You missed," Harper said calmly. "I'll do more than miss next time." "No, you won't." Harper's voice stayed level, almost bored. "Because Cross told you to keep me viable, and you're afraid of her. More afraid of her than you are angry at me." Morrison's face went purple. He wanted to hit her so badly she could taste his rage in the air between them. But he didn't, because she was right, and they both knew it. 72 hours is almost up," he said through gritted teeth. "Then you're not our problem anymore. And whoever buys you, they won't be as nice as we've been." He left the water on the floor where she couldn't reach it, then stormed out. Harper counted to 60, making sure he was gone, then dislocated her left thumb with a practiced twist. The zip tie slipped over her hand immediately. She grabbed the water bottle, drank half in 3 long gulps, then popped her thumb back into socket and resecured the restraint before anyone could check the camera feeds. 43 seconds. She was getting faster. But she'd learned something critical. Morrison's temper was a liability. He'd react instead of think. That made him predictable. Useful. 6 hours later, the Russian brought food. Stale bread, hard cheese, apple slices that had started to brown. He unclipped her restraints again, and Harper's arms dropped like dead weight. She couldn't fully suppress the gasp of pain as blood flow returned. "Hurts?" the Russian asked. "Yes." He didn't apologize, but he held her arms steady while the worst of the pins and needles sensation passed. Small mercy, but mercy nonetheless. "What's your name?" Harper asked. He hesitated. "Why you want to know?" "Because I'm tired of calling you the Russian in my head." "Dmitri." "Thank you, Dmitri." He looked uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Eat. You need strength." Harper ate slowly, deliberately. She needed the calories, but she also needed the time. "How long have you worked for Brandt?" 3 years. "And before that?" "Russian Army. Spetsnaz." He said it without pride, just fact. "I was good at my job. Then the Army decided I was too old. 42 is ancient for special operations, yes? So I came here. Money is better. Questions are fewer." "But the work is harder on your conscience." Dmitri's jaw tightened. "I don't talk about conscience with prisoners." "Why not? I'm just inventory, right? What do you care what I think?" "Because thinking is how problems start." He took the empty food wrapper from her hands. "You think too much. This is why Morrison hates you. This is why Cross watches you different than the others." "What others?" He froze. The words had slipped out, and he knew it. "Dmitri," Harper said softly. "How many others are here right now?" "I don't." "You do. And you're going to tell me. Because part of you wants someone to know. Part of you wants witness to what's happening here." His face went through 3 different expressions in 2 seconds. Anger, denial, resignation. Then he leaned in close and whispered, 3. American military. 2 men, 1 woman. They are in the East Wing, but you cannot help them. You cannot even help yourself." "Where in the East Wing?" "Why does it matter?" "Because when I get out of here, I'm not leaving anyone behind." Dmitri actually laughed, bitter and short. "You think you are getting out? Harper, you don't understand. This facility, it was built during Cold War. Underground levels, reinforced walls, emergency protocols that seal entire sections. Even if you escape your cell, you would never reach the surface. And even if you reached the surface, we are surrounded by 40 kilometers of nothing. No roads, no villages, no help." "Sounds like you've thought about escaping yourself." His face went blank. "I think about many things. I do none of them." "Why not?" "Because I have daughter, and Brandt knows where she lives." There it was, the real chain that held Dmitri. Not money, not loyalty, but fear. Brandt had leveraged the one thing that mattered more than conscience. "What's the exit protocol?" Harper asked. "When you move prisoners out of here, how does it work?" "Helicopter. Lands on the North Pad. Prisoners are sedated, loaded in cargo netting, transported to airfield 30 kilometers away. From there, cargo plane takes them to..." He stopped. "I'm saying too much." "You're saying exactly enough." Harper met his eyes. "Dmitri, when this goes wrong, and it will go wrong, make sure you're not in the building." "What are you talking about?" 72 hours, you said. That's when they move me. That's when everything changes." She lowered her voice to barely a whisper. "Get your daughter somewhere safe, then get yourself somewhere safer. Because I'm not going to be the only one who burns this place down." Dmitri stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Then he reclipped her restraints without another word and left. Harper waited 5 minutes. Then she worked her jaw carefully, feeling for the microtransmitter embedded in her lower left molar. It was designed to look like a filling, but the ceramic casing housed enough tech to send burst transmissions to satellite relay. Limited battery life, maybe 6 transmissions total before it died. She'd already used 2. She bit down in the specific sequence. 3 short, 2 long, 1 short. Morse code embedded in pressure sensors. The message would compress into a data packet and bounce to her team within 30 seconds. The transmission. Alive. 3 additional prisoners. East Wing. Extraction window 48 hours. Helicopter north pad. Will attempt signal during transfer. She released the pressure and felt the faint vibration against her tooth that meant the message had sent. No way to know if it had been received. No way to know if her team was even listening anymore. But she had to believe they were. Because if they weren't, the next 48 hours would be significantly harder. Dr. Cross arrived 3 hours later, and she wasn't alone. She brought a laptop, a portable speaker, and an expression that promised nothing good. "How are you feeling, Harper?" "Like I'm chained to a wall." "Humor, that's a defense mechanism, maintains psychological distance from trauma." Cross set up the laptop on a small folding table. "Do you know what I did before this? I was a military psychologist, top clearance. I evaluated special operations personnel for fitness and resilience. I wrote the protocols that decide who gets to wear your uniform. And now you torture the people you used to protect." "I don't torture anyone." Cross's voice was clinical, detached. "I conduct research. The military wanted to understand breaking points, resistance thresholds, how long enhanced interrogation could be sustained before permanent psychological damage occurred. So I studied it for years. Then they classified my findings, buried my work, and told me it was all theoretical." "So you decided to test it for real?" "I decided to stop letting institutions waste my expertise." Cross opened the laptop. "You want to know what breaks people, Harper? It's not pain. Pain is temporary. The body adapts. No, what breaks people is helplessness. The knowledge that nothing they do will change their situation." She pressed a key. Audio filled the cell. A woman's voice screaming, not in pain, in rage. Screaming words that Harper recognized because she'd heard herself say them during SEER training. "That's Captain Jennifer Ortiz," Cross narrated. "Air Force Intelligence. Listen to how her voice changes over the 4 days. Day 1, she's angry. Day 2, she's desperate. Day 3, she's bargaining. Day 4, she's broken." Harper kept her face neutral, but inside her mind was cataloging everything. Ortiz had lasted 4 days. That was longer than most. She'd been strong. Cross played another recording, male voice this time. "Lieutenant Webb, 6 days. Notice the progression. He tried to resist using logic at first, arguing about Geneva Conventions, rules of war, consequences. Then he tried silence. Then he tried to hurt himself to force us to release the restraints." "And then he talked," Harper finished. "And then he talked." Cross stopped the playback. "They all talk eventually. The only question is what state they're in when they do. Some walk out of here functional, some leave as shells. What happens to you depends entirely on how quickly you accept reality." "And what reality is that?" "That you're not leaving here as Lieutenant Harper Kane, Navy SEAL. You're leaving here as whatever we decide to make you. A propaganda asset, an intelligence source, a cautionary tale." Cross leaned forward. "The smart ones cooperate early. They get better treatment, faster processing, and buyers who'll keep them relatively intact. The stubborn ones?" She shrugged. "Morrison has a room upstairs where he practices his creativity. You don't want to see that room." Harper looked at Cross for a long moment. "You really believe you're in control here?" "I am in control here." "No." Harper's voice was soft but certain. "You're just further along in the same trap as everyone else." Brandt has something on you. Maybe it's money, maybe it's blackmail, maybe it's just that you went too far to turn back. But you're not in control. You're just another prisoner who hasn't realized she's in chains. Cross's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Hit too close. Projection is another defense mechanism, Cross said. You're trying to externalize your powerlessness by imagining everyone else shares it. Am I? Harper shifted slightly, testing the zip ties again. Or am I just seeing the situation more clearly than you want to admit? Cross stood abruptly. I'm going to give you 12 more hours. Then we proceed to Phase 2. That's when Morrison gets to ask his questions. And he doesn't use recordings, Harper. He uses tools. She left, but the laptop stayed, still playing audio. Voices of the broken, cycling through their progression from resistance to surrender. Harper listened to all of it, not because Cross wanted her to, but because each recording told her something. How long they'd lasted, what techniques had been used, which ones had worked. She was building a counter-resistance profile, learning from their mistakes. Because she wasn't going to break. Not in 12 hours, not in 48. Not ever. 10 hours later, Morrison returned. He had a black canvas bag with him, and when he set it on the floor, Harper heard metal clanking inside. Time's up, Weakling. Cross says we move to the next phase. She's early. She's impatient, wants results before the transfer. He unzipped the bag. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to answer. And every time you lie or stay silent, I'm going to introduce you to a new friend from my collection. Harper saw the first tool emerge. Pliers. Not regular pliers, surgical grade, designed for precision. Let's start simple, Morrison said. What were you really doing in the server room? Downloading quarterly reports. The pliers closed around her left pinky fingernail. Wrong answer. Harper's training kicked in. Pain was information. Acknowledge it, categorize it, file it away. Don't let it control the response. Wait, she said. Wait. I'll tell you. Morrison paused. I'm listening. I was mapping your network, finding communication protocols, building a target package for... She stopped, letting her voice crack, letting fear bleed through. For who? Morrison leaned in. Who sent you? JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. They've been tracking your operation for 6 months. I was advanced reconnaissance. It was close enough to truth to be believable, far enough from reality to protect actual operational details. Morrison's face lit up. JSOC. How many operators do they have in theater? I don't know. I was solo insertion. They don't tell us about other assets. Bullshit. You know the staging area. You know the support structure. I know there's a forward operating base in Romania. I know there's satellite coverage. I know extraction was supposed to happen 72 hours after insertion. Harper let tears form. But I missed the window. They're gone. They think I'm dead. Morrison studied her face. You're lying. I'm not. The pliers tightened. Harper screamed, but it was calculated, measured, just enough to seem real without fully committing. Tell me the ROE, Morrison demanded. Rules of engagement. What were your orders if you were compromised? Deny, resist, escape. In that order. And if you couldn't escape? Harper met his eyes. Then I was expendable. The word landed perfectly because it was true. Every operator knew it. In certain situations, recovery wasn't coming. You were on your own. Morrison released the pressure. See? That wasn't hard. Now let's talk about... The door burst open. Brant stood there, face flushed. We have a problem. I'm in the middle of... Now, Morrison. Morrison dropped the pliers and followed Brant into the corridor. Harper couldn't hear their conversation, but she could see their body language through the gap in the door. Brant was angry. Morrison was defensive, and then Cross appeared, holding a tablet, showing them something that made all three faces go white. They'd found something. Or someone had found them. The door slammed shut. Harper was alone again. She worked fast, thumb dislocated, zip tie slipped, arms free. She grabbed the pliers Morrison had left behind and used them to snap the carabiner clip linking her restraints to the wall. Then she crossed to the door, pressing her ear against the metal. Voices, distant but audible. Satellite pass detected. Encrypted burst transmission. Source unknown but originated within facility. They knew someone had sent a signal. They just didn't know it was Harper. She heard footsteps approaching. Harper dove back to her position, re-securing the restraints, dropping the pliers back where Morrison had left them. Her thumb popped back into socket with a nauseating click. The door opened. Cross entered, alone this time, and she looked genuinely rattled. Someone here is communicating with outside assets, Cross said without preamble. Do you know anything about that?
How would I? I've been chained to a wall.
Cross's eyes narrowed. That transmission used military encryption, satellite relay. That's not something a scared IT contractor would have access to.
Then maybe you have a different leak.
Or maybe you're not as helpless as you pretend. Cross stepped closer, too close, invading Harper's personal space. What are you, Harper? Really? Harper looked her dead in the eye.
I'm the person you're going to wish you'd killed when you had the chance.
Cross's hand moved toward Harper's face, maybe to strike her, maybe just to intimidate. But she got within 6 inches, and Harper moved. Headbutt, straight forward. Harper's forehead connected with Cross's nose with a wet crunch. Blood exploded across both their faces. Cross stumbled backward, hands clutching her face, too shocked to scream. Harper slipped the restraints, she'd kept them loose, and was on her feet in one fluid motion. 3 seconds. That's all she had before Cross recovered, or someone heard the commotion. Harper grabbed Cross by the throat, spun her against the wall, and whispered in her ear. You wanted to know what breaks people? It's not helplessness. It's underestimating the person you're breaking. Then Harper released her, dove back to her original position, and resecured the restraints with bleeding hands. Her forehead throbbed where she'd made contact, and Cross's blood was still warm on her face. Cross stood there, swaying, blood pouring from her nose. You just...
Fell,
Harper said loudly, for the cameras.
You got too close, and I tried to get away, and you fell. That's what happened. Right, Doctor?
Cross understood the threat. If she admitted Harper had attacked her, she'd have to admit she'd gotten close enough to let it happen. She'd have to admit she'd underestimated a prisoner. That would be career-ending in Brant's organization.
Right,
Cross said through her hands. I fell. She left without another word. Harper sat in the silence, heart pounding, and allowed herself the smallest smile. She'd just tested her chains, tested her enemy, and proven something critical. When the moment came, she could move fast enough to matter. Now she just needed the right moment. The facility went on lockdown within an hour. Harper heard the alarms, felt the vibration of heavy doors sealing throughout the compound. Brant was panicking, which meant her transmission had done exactly what she'd hoped. It had made them paranoid. Paranoid people made mistakes. Morrison came back 6 hours later, and this time he brought Dmitri with him. Both men looked exhausted, wired on adrenaline and caffeine. "Get her up," Morrison ordered. Dmitri unclipped the restraints and Harper's arms dropped. She didn't fake the weakness this time. 48 hours in stress position had done real damage. Her shoulders screamed when she tried to move them. "We're moving you," Morrison said. "Early extraction. Buyer got nervous about the security breach."
What security breach?
Harper's voice came out hoarse. "Don't play stupid. Someone sent a signal from inside this facility. Military encryption, satellite relay, and you're the only prisoner with that kind of training."
I've been chained to a wall. How exactly would I transmit anything?
Morrison grabbed her jaw, forcing her mouth open. He shined a flashlight inside, checking her teeth. Harper's pulse spiked. If he found the molar transmitter, everything was over. He looked at her molars, her fillings, spent 15 seconds examining everything. Then he released her roughly. "She's clean," he told Dmitri. "Must be someone else." Harper didn't let herself relax. Not yet. "On your feet," Morrison ordered. Harper stood, swaying. Her legs barely held her weight. Dmitri caught her elbow, steadying her, and she saw something in his face. Warning? Apology? She couldn't tell. They walked her through corridors she hadn't seen before. Harper counted steps, memorized turns, cataloged every door. 43 steps to the first junction. Left turn. 18 more steps. Right turn. Stairs going up, one flight, then another. They were moving her toward the surface. But they passed a corridor on the second landing, and Harper heard it. Voices. American accents. Coming from behind a reinforced door marked with Cyrillic letters she couldn't read. "Keep moving," Morrison snapped when she hesitated.
Who's in there?
"None of your concern."
It is if they're American.
Morrison shoved her forward. "I said move." But Harper had heard enough. 3 voices, maybe 4. That matched what Dmitri had told her. The other prisoners were real, and they were close. They brought her to a different cell, larger than the first, with a cot instead of just a drain. Morrison cuffed her wrists to a pipe running along the wall, but he left her in a sitting position instead of the stress position. "Helicopter comes at dawn," he said. 6 hours. Use them to think about how cooperative you want to be when you land in Minsk."
And if I'm not cooperative?
Morrison smiled. It was the worst thing she'd seen him do yet.
Then your buyer will teach you. He specializes in reconditioning. Breaks people down, rebuilds them into whatever he wants. I've seen his work. It's impressive. Terrifying, but impressive. He left. Dmitri lingered for a moment. 6 hours, he repeated quietly. After that, I cannot help you. You can't help me now. I can tell you that the east corridor connects to this wing through the ventilation system. I can tell you the guards change shift at 0400.
I can tell you the helicopter pilot always arrives 30 minutes early to do pre-flight checks. He met her eyes. But what you do with that information? That is not my responsibility. He left before Harper could respond. She sat in the silence, processing. Dmitri had just given her the entire escape window. Not directly, he had plausible deniability, but the information was there. 0400 shift change, 30 minutes before dawn for pre-flight, ventilation access to the east corridor. Harper looked at the pipe her cuffs were attached to. Old Soviet construction, steel that had been painted and repainted over decades. She tested it gently. Solid. But the brackets holding it to the wall were older, corroded in places where moisture had seeped through the concrete. She had 6 hours to get free, find 3 prisoners,
and reach a helicopter pad she'd never seen. Impossible odds. Good thing she'd trained for impossible. Harper started with the cuffs.
Standard chain link design, nothing fancy. She couldn't slip them. Morrison had learned from Cross's mistake, but she could work them. She twisted her wrists, pulling against the chain until the metal bit into her skin hard enough to draw blood. The blood made her wrists slippery. She pulled harder. The pain was extraordinary, but pain was just signals firing in her brain. She could acknowledge the signals without obeying them. 30 minutes later, her right hand slipped free. The skin was shredded, bleeding freely, but she was loose. She immediately started on the pipe, grabbed it with both hands, and pulled, testing the bracket. It moved. Just a fraction, but it moved. Harper braced her feet against the wall and pulled harder. The bracket groaned, rust flaking away from the concrete. She repositioned, changed the angle, pulled again. The bracket broke with a sound like a gunshot. Harper froze, listening. Footsteps in the corridor outside, running. She had maybe 10 seconds. She grabbed the loose section of pipe, 3 feet of steel, heavy enough to be useful, and positioned herself beside the door. When it opened, she'd have one chance. The door swung inward. A guard she hadn't seen before stepped through, rifle raised. Harper swung the pipe like a bat. It connected with the rifle barrel, knocking it aside. The guard tried to recover, tried to bring the weapon around, but Harper was already inside his reach. She drove her elbow into his throat, crushing his windpipe. He went down, choking. She caught the rifle before it hit the floor, checked the magazine. 30 rounds. Safety off. Harper stepped over the guard's body and moved into the corridor. Left or right? She went left, moving toward where she'd heard the American voices earlier. The corridor was empty. 0347, according to the clock mounted on the wall. 13 minutes until shift change. She had to move fast. She found the door with Cyrillic markings. Locked, but the guard had keys on his belt. Harper ran back, grabbed them, returned. Third key worked. The door opened into a cell exactly like her first one. 3 people chained to the wall, all in various states of exhaustion. 2 men, 1 woman, just like Dmitri had said. The woman looked up first. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, but her voice was steady. "Who the hell are you?" "Lieutenant Harper Kane, Navy SEAL. I'm getting you out." "About damn time." The woman tried to smile but winced instead. "Captain Sarah Chen, Air Force Intelligence." "Lieutenant Marcus Webb," one of the men said. He looked worse than Chen, like he'd been there longer. "Army." "Sergeant First Class David Park," the third prisoner added. "Marines." Harper used the keys to unlock their restraints. Webb could barely stand. His legs had atrophied from the stress position. Park was better, but his hands shook from what looked like nerve damage. Chen moved best, but her breathing was labored. "Can you fight?" Harper asked. "Can we walk first?" Webb said. "No time. Helicopter extraction in 6 hours. We need to reach the north pad before they realize we're loose." 6 hours? Park laughed, bitter. "We won't make it 6 minutes. "Then we make it 5 and improvise." Harper handed the rifle to Chen. "You're on point. Webb, stay center. Park, rear guard. I'll navigate." "With what?" Chen asked. "You have a map?" "I have what I memorized. It'll have to be enough." They moved into the corridor. Harper led them back the way she'd come, retracing her steps. 43 paces. Right turn. 18 paces. Left turn. An alarm started screaming. "They found the guard," Harper said. "Move faster." "We can't fight our way out," Webb wheezed. "There's too many of them." "We're not fighting out. We're slipping out. Big difference." Harper pulled them into a side passage.
Ventilation access should be here. She found the grate, yanked it open with the pipe. In, now.
Chen went first, then Webb, then Park. Harper climbed in last, pulling the grate closed behind them. The vent shaft was barely wide enough for shoulders, but it ran horizontal, and she could hear air moving through it.
Follow the airflow, she whispered. It has to lead somewhere.
They crawled. The metal was cold, sharp in places where seams hadn't been welded properly. Harper's shredded wrists left blood smears on the metal, but she ignored it. Behind them, voices echoed. Morrison's voice, loud and furious. "Find them! I want every corridor locked down!" The ventilation shaft split. Left or right? Harper felt the airflow. Stronger on the right. This way. They crawled for what felt like hours but was probably 10 minutes. The shaft started angling upward, and Harper's arms burned from pulling herself forward. Then she heard it. Rotor blades. Distant, but distinct.
Helicopter's early, she breathed.
Good or bad? Park asked.
Depends on whether we can steal it.
The shaft ended at another grate. Harper peered through. They were looking down into what appeared to be a storage area. Equipment lockers, ammunition crates, and one door with a window showing gray pre-dawn light.
We're close to the surface,
Harper whispered. Chen, how's your shooting? Rusty, but functional. Good enough. When we hit the ground, you cover our 6. Park, you help Webb. I'm on point. Harper positioned herself to kick the grate. On 3. 1, 2, 3. The grate exploded outward. Harper dropped through, landed in a crouch, rifle sweeping the room. Empty. The others followed, Webb nearly collapsing when he hit the ground. Park caught him, hauled him upright. Move, Harper ordered. She led them to the door, cracked it open. The helicopter pad was 50 meters away, and the bird was already there. Russian transport model, probably Mi-8. The pilot was doing his walk-around check. 1 pilot, no guards yet, Harper assessed. Windows closing fast. We just walk up and take it? Chen asked. You have a better idea? Actually, no. Harper opened the door wider. Stay low, stay quiet. If anyone sees us, we go loud and we go fast. Understood? 3 nods. They moved across the open ground. 40 meters. 30. The pilot was on the far side of the helicopter, checking the tail rotor. 20 meters. A door opened behind them. Morrison's voice carried across the pad. Stop right there! Harper spun, rifle up. Morrison stood in the doorway, sidearm drawn, flanked by 3 guards. You're not leaving, Morrison said. Drop the weapon. You first. I've got 4 guns. You've got 3 injured prisoners and a rifle you probably can't shoot straight after hanging from a wall for 2 days. Try me. Morrison smiled. Dmitri, get out here. Dmitri emerged from the building, face pale, hands empty. I'm sorry, he said quietly, and Harper couldn't tell if he was talking to her or Morrison. You helped them, Morrison accused. You told her about the shift change. I told her nothing. Bullshit. You've been soft on her since day 1. Morrison's gun shifted toward Dmitri. You know the penalty for betraying the organization. I know many things, Dmitri said. I know you have been stealing from Brandt. I know you have been selling information to competitors. I know you killed the last prisoner who tried to escape and told Brandt she died during transfer. Morrison's face went white. You're lying. I have proof. Recordings, documents. I have been collecting evidence for 6 months. Dmitri pulled a phone from his pocket. And I sent it to Brandt 10 minutes ago. Morrison's gun swung fully toward Dmitri.
Harper moved. She fired once. The shot took Morrison in the shoulder, spinning him. The other guards raised their weapons, and Chen opened up from behind Harper. 3 round bursts that sent the guards diving for cover. "Go!" Harper shouted.
Get to the helicopter! Park and Webb ran. Chen laid down covering fire. Harper grabbed Dmitri as he stumbled.
"Why?"
Harper asked. Because my daughter deserves a father who did one right thing. Dmitri pressed the phone into her hand. Everything you need is here. Names, locations, bank accounts. Burn it all. Morrison was getting up, reaching for his weapon with his good hand. Harper aimed at him, finger on the trigger. Don't, Dmitri said quietly. That is not who you are. Harper hesitated. Morrison grabbed his gun. Dmitri moved faster than Harper expected. He tackled Morrison, driving him to the ground. Morrison's gun went off. Once. Twice. Dmitri went limp.
"No!"
Harper fired. Morrison took the round in the chest, fell back. She dropped to her knees beside Dmitri. His eyes were still open, still conscious.
"Your daughter," Harper said. "Where is she?"
Volgograd, with her mother. Address is in the phone. Blood bubbled on his lips.
"Tell her I remembered how to be brave."
I will, I swear. Dmitri smiled. Then the light went out of his eyes. Harper closed them gently, took the phone, and ran for the helicopter. Chen was already in the cockpit, hands moving over controls.
"You can fly this?"
Harper shouted over the rotor noise.
"I'm rated on the Black Hawk. Close enough."
The helicopter lifted. Bullets sparked off the hull as guards poured out of the building. Harper leaned out, firing controlled bursts, keeping them pinned. They cleared the compound. Chen pushed the bird forward, gaining speed and altitude. Webb was crying in the back, whether from relief or trauma, Harper couldn't tell. Park just stared at the facility shrinking below them.
"We made it,"
Chen said, disbelief in her voice.
"We actually made it."
Harper looked at the phone in her hands. Dmitri's last gift. Evidence that could bring down not just this facility, but the entire network. It's not over, she said. This is just the beginning. The helicopter had been airborne for 17 minutes when Chen's voice cracked through the headset. We have a problem. Harper looked up from Dmitri's phone. Define problem. Fuel gauge is dropping too fast. They didn't fully load the tank. How long do we have? 20 minutes, maybe 25 if I push it. Chen's hands stayed steady on the controls, but her voice betrayed the calculation happening in her head. We're not making it to Romania. Park leaned forward from the back. What about Ukraine? We're close to the border. Ukraine's got its own problems right now. We land there, we could end up in a different kind of custody. Harper pulled up the map on Dmitri's phone. There. Abandoned airfield, 12 kilometers northeast. Soviet era. Probably hasn't been used in 20 years, but the runway should still be intact. Should be? Webb's voice was weak, but he was still conscious. You're betting our lives on should be? You got a better option, I'm all ears. Silence. 12 kilometers, Chen said. I can make 12 kilometers. The helicopter's engine coughed. Once, then steadied. Make it fast, Harper added. Chen pushed the bird harder, and Harper went back to Dmitri's phone. The files were encrypted, but the password was embarrassingly simple. Katya 2016. His daughter's name and birth year. Inside were folders spanning 3 years of documentation, video files, audio recordings, bank transactions, shipping manifests, and a ledger that made Harper's stomach turn. 47 prisoners. 47 names, ranks, dates of capture, dates of sale. Prices ranging from $50,000 to $500,000, depending on clearance level and intelligence value. Jesus Christ, Harper whispered. "What is it?" Park asked.
47. They've trafficked 47 military personnel in 3 years.
Harper's hands shook as she scrolled. Americans, British, Germans, French, all special operations or intelligence, all sold like cattle to hostile governments. Who's buying? Harper found the buyer list. Her blood went cold. North Korea, Syria, Iran, private military corporations in Africa, some I don't even recognize. She looked up. This isn't rogue contractors. This is systematic. Someone's coordinating this at a level way above Brandt. The helicopter shuddered again. Chen swore. "Fuel pressure's dropping. We're not making 12 kilometers. How far can you get us? 8, maybe 9. Then we walk the rest." Harper tucked the phone into her jacket. "Everyone check yourselves. Can you walk 9 kilometers? Webb tried to stand, fell back immediately. "I can barely stand 9 minutes. "Then Park carries you. Chen, can you navigate on the ground?" "If we have a compass and basic terrain features, yes." "We'll figure it out." Harper moved to the side door. "How long until we're down?" 3 minutes. Harper looked at the 3 prisoners she'd just liberated. Chen was holding together through pure willpower. Park's hands still shook, but he was functional. Webb looked like death warmed over. "Listen to me," Harper said. "I know you're hurt. I know you're exhausted. I know you've been through hell. But we are not done yet. We get to that airfield, we call for extraction, and we go home. But if we don't make it, everything Dmitri died for means nothing. All 47 of those people on that list, they stay disappeared. So I need you to dig deeper than you've ever dug before. Can you do that?" Chen nodded immediately. Park took a breath, then nodded. Webb's nod was slower, but it was there. "Good. Because in about 2 minutes, we're going to find out what we're really made of." The helicopter hit the ground hard. Not a crash, but not a landing either. Chen killed the engine, and they piled out into knee-high grass that stretched in every direction. Harper oriented herself using the sun. Northeast. She started walking, and the others followed. They'd covered maybe half a kilometer when Harper heard it. Another helicopter. Distant, but getting closer. "They're following us," Park said. "Of course they are. We stole their extraction bird." Harper picked up the pace. "Move faster!" Webb stumbled. Park caught him, hauled him upright, half-dragged him forward. Chen took Webb's other side, and together they kept moving. The helicopter sound grew louder. Harper scanned the terrain. Nothing. Just grass and the occasional cluster of trees. No cover, no concealment. They were completely exposed. "There," Chen pointed. "Tree line, 200 meters." They ran. Harper's wrists screamed from the shredded skin. Her shoulders burned from the stress position damage, but she ran anyway. Webb's breathing sounded like a dying engine, but he didn't stop. The helicopter crested the horizon behind them. Brandt's voice came through a loudspeaker, amplified and distorted. "You have nowhere to go, Kane. Stop running and I'll make this quick." Harper dove into the trees. The others crashed through behind her. The canopy was thin, barely enough to hide them, but it was something. The helicopter circled overhead. Harper could see the side door open, could see armed figures leaning out. "They can't land here," Chen gasped. "Trees are too dense." "They don't need to land. They just need to pin us until ground support arrives." Harper checked Dimitri's phone. Still had signal. She pulled up the emergency beacon app every operator had on their devices. "What are you doing?" Park asked. "Calling the cavalry." Harper activated the beacon. "JSOC monitors these frequencies. If anyone's listening, they'll know we're here." "If," Webb wheezed. "You got a better plan?" The helicopter made another pass. Bullets tore through the canopy, shredding leaves and bark. Everyone hit the ground. "They're not trying to capture us anymore," Chen said. "No, they're trying to silence us." Harper looked at the phone in her hand. All that evidence, all those names. They can't let this information get out. The helicopter pulled back, circling at a distance. Harper watched it, confused. Why retreat? Then she heard the vehicles, multiple engines, heavy, coming from the west. "Ground team," Park said. "We're surrounded." Harper's mind raced. 4 injured operators, no weapons except one rifle with maybe 10 rounds left, against an unknown number of hostiles with vehicle support and air coverage. The math didn't work. But math had never been her specialty anyway. "Chen, how good are you at making improvised explosive devices?" "What? I'm a pilot, not a demo tech." "You're Air Force. You've been through basic ordnance training." "That was a 4-hour class 7 years ago." "Then you're overqualified." Harper handed her the phone. "There's enough battery in this thing to make a decent initiator. We just need something to initiate." "Like what?" Harper looked at the helicopter still circling overhead. "Fuel tank. If we can lure them close enough, hit them with the phone battery rigged to spark, the fuel vapor does the rest." "That's insane," Webb said. "You're welcome to suggest alternatives." No one did. Harper pulled the battery from Dimitri's phone, wrapped it in wire stripped from her jacket lining, and handed it to Chen. "When I give the signal, you throw this at the helicopter. Aim for the fuel tank intake." "And if I miss?" "Then we die slightly faster than we would have anyway." The vehicles were getting closer. Harper could hear men shouting commands in Russian. "Park, take Webb deeper into the trees. Chen, get ready." Harper moved to the edge of the tree line, rifle raised. "I'm going to make them angry." She stepped into the open and fired 3 shots at the helicopter. The rounds sparked off the hull, doing no real damage, but getting their attention. The helicopter banked toward her. Perfect. Harper fired again. The pilot brought the bird lower, probably trying to get a better angle for the door gunners. "Chen, now!" Chen threw the battery assembly. It arced through the air, tumbling, and for one horrible second, Harper thought it would fall short. It hit the helicopter's side panel, 6 inches from the fuel intake, and the makeshift initiator sparked. Nothing happened. Then everything happened. The fuel tank didn't explode dramatically like in movies. It just caught fire, fast and hungry, spreading across the hull. The pilot fought for control, but the fire was already in the engine compartment. The helicopter tilted, spun, and dropped. It hit the ground 200 meters away. The impact finished what the fire started. The explosion was everything Harper had hoped for, big, loud, and completely distracting to the ground team closing in. "Run!" Harper shouted. They ran northeast, using the chaos as cover. Behind them, the vehicle convoy had stopped, probably trying to figure out what just happened. Harper's lungs burned. Her legs felt like they were filled with acid. Webb was making sounds that no human should make, but he was still moving. They broke from the trees. The abandoned airfield was right there, 500 meters ahead. Cracked concrete runway, collapsed hangar, and nothing else. But on the horizon, coming fast, Harper saw them. 4 helicopters, American markings, flying in formation. "That's the cavalry," she gasped. The lead helicopter touched down on the runway. Armed operators poured out, establishing a security perimeter. Harper recognized the unit patches. SEAL Team 6, her actual team, not the cover story. A man stepped forward. Commander James Riggs, her direct superior. His face was grim, but relieved. "Lieutenant Kane, you look like hell." "Feel worse, sir." Harper's legs gave out. Siggs caught her before she hit the ground. "We got your transmission, both of them. The second one gave us your location." He looked at Chen, Park, and Webb. "These the other prisoners?" "Yes, sir. Captain Sarah Chen, Air Force. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Army. Sergeant First Class David Park, Marines." "Medic!" Riggs called. Then to Harper. "You secured the evidence?" Harper pulled out Dimitri's phone, the battery removed, the device intact. "Everything. 3 years of documentation. 47 prisoners. Names, buyers, bank accounts. It's all here." Riggs took the phone like it was made of glass. "This is going to start a war." "Good. It should." Harper's vision was starting to blur. "Dimitri died getting this. Make sure it counts." "Who's Dimitri?" "A man who remembered how to be brave." Harper felt her knees buckle again. "Sir, he has a daughter, Volgograd, Russia. Her name is Katya. She needs to know what her father did." "We'll find her," Riggs promised. The medics descended on all 4 of them. Harper let them work, too exhausted to fight anymore. She watched them load Webb onto a stretcher. He was unconscious now, but his pulse was steady. Park was walking under his own power, barely. Chen refused the stretcher, insisted on walking to the helicopter. "Kane," Riggs crouched beside her. "Brandt and Cross, are they still at the facility?" "Brandt is. Cross, I don't know. Morrison's dead. Dimitri killed him." "We've got assets moving on the compound now. Anyone left there is going into custody." He paused. "You did good work. Impossible work." "It wasn't me. It was all of us." Harper looked at the other 3 prisoners. "They held on. They didn't break." "Neither did you." "Yes, I did." Harper's voice was quiet. "I broke into 1,000 pieces, sir. I just didn't stay that way." They flew her to a military hospital in Germany. 3 days of medical evaluation, debriefing, psychological assessment. Harper told them everything, multiple times, to multiple agencies. NCIS, Naval Intelligence, DoD investigators. They all wanted to hear the story. On day 4, they brought in someone different, a woman in a civilian suit, no name tag, no identification except a badge that said DOJ Special Investigations Unit. "Lieutenant Kane, I'm here to talk about prosecution." "Of who?" "Everyone." The woman, Harper started thinking of her as Agent Stone because she looked like she was made of granite, opened a folder. "Dimitri's phone gave us 23 high-value targets. We've arrested 11 in the past 72 hours. The others are in the wind, but we'll find them." "What about Brandt?" "Commander Victor Brandt was taken into custody at the compound. He's currently being held at an undisclosed location awaiting trial." Agent Stone paused. "He's asking for a deal." "No deals." "He's offering information. Names of people higher up the chain. Says this operation had backing from multiple governments, including some we consider allies." Harper's stomach turned. "How high does this go?" "We don't know yet. That's why I'm here. We need you to testify. Everything you saw, everything you experienced. On record, under oath." "When?" "Tribunal starts in 3 weeks. The Hague. International War Crimes Court." Agent Stone met her eyes. "This is going to be public, Kane. Your face, your name, your story. The whole world is going to know what happened to you." Harper thought about the 9 videos Cross had shown her, the broken prisoners, the people who'd been where she was and hadn't made it out. "Good," she said. "Let them know. Let everyone know what these people did." 2 weeks later, Harper sat in a hotel room in The Hague, staring at her reflection. She'd been medically cleared, psychologically evaluated, and deemed fit to testify. But she didn't feel fit. She felt hollow. Chen visited that evening. She looked better. The bruises had faded, the swelling gone down. You ready for tomorrow?
No. Are you?
Not even a little bit. Chen sat on the edge of the bed.
I keep thinking about Ortiz, about Webb and Park, and all the others who didn't get to tell their stories. We're telling them now. Are we? Or are we just reliving our trauma for strangers who never understand what it was like?
Harper didn't have an answer for that. Chen stood to leave, then turned back.
For what it's worth, you saved my life, Park's life, Webb's life. Whatever happens in that courtroom, that's real. That matters.
After she left, Harper pulled out her phone. She'd been avoiding the news, but she couldn't anymore. She needed to see what the world knew. The headlines were everywhere. International trafficking ring exposed. Dozens of military personnel sold to hostile nations. Navy SEAL escapes captivity, exposes conspiracy.
They had her name. They had her photo. They had everything.
Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Lieutenant Kane, this is Katya Volkov. Agent Riggs found me. He told me what my father did. Thank you for keeping your promise. He would be proud to know you made it home. Harper read the message 3 times. Then she saved it. Tomorrow she'd walk into that courtroom. She'd face Brandt and Cross and everyone who'd participated in 47 kidnappings, 47 sales, 47 lives destroyed. And she'd make sure the world knew that calling someone weak didn't make them breakable. It just made you blind to what they were really capable of. The courtroom was sterile in the way only international institutions could be. Everything was precise, measured, designed to strip away emotion and leave only fact. Harper sat in the witness chair, facing a panel of judges from 7 different countries, and tried to remember that this was supposed to be justice. Brandt sat 20 feet away, flanked by 2 lawyers who looked like they billed by the minute. He'd lost weight in custody, the arrogance stripped down to something harder and meaner. When their eyes met, he smiled. Harper didn't look away. The prosecutor stood, a Dutch woman named Vanderberg, who'd spent 30 years putting war criminals behind bars. Lieutenant Kane, please state your name and rank for the record. Lieutenant Harper Kane, United States Navy, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. And can you tell the court what happened on March 15th of this year? Harper took a breath. I was captured during a classified intelligence operation in Moldova. I was detained, tortured, and prepared for sale to a hostile foreign government. Sale? One of the judges leaned forward. Can you elaborate? The defendant, Commander Victor Brandt, operated a human trafficking network that specialized in capturing and selling military intelligence personnel. Over 3 years, his organization trafficked 47 people. I was supposed to be number 48. Brandt's lawyer stood immediately. Objection! The witness is characterizing my client's alleged activities without establishing direct evidence of his involvement. I have direct evidence, Harper said. I have 3 years of documentation. Video files, audio recordings, financial transactions, shipping manifests, and a buyer ledger that includes my name, my rank, and the price negotiated for my transfer to Belarus. Vanderberg pulled up a document on the screen. Is this the ledger you're referring to? Harper recognized Dimitri's files. Yes. And how did you obtain this evidence? A man named Dmitry Volkov, who worked for Brandt's organization, gave it to me before he was killed trying to help us escape. The courtroom went silent. Brandt's smile disappeared. Vanderberg continued. Can you describe the conditions of your detention? Harper did. She told them about the stress position, the psychological torture, the systematic dehumanization. She told them about Morrison's pliers and Cross's recordings and the 9 videos of broken prisoners. She told them everything. When she finished, one of the judges asked, "Why didn't you break, Lieutenant Kane?" Harper looked at him. "Because I knew someone was counting on me not to. The 3 people I helped escape. The 47 people on that list who deserved to have their stories told. Dimitri's daughter, who needed to know her father died for something that mattered." She paused. "And because giving them what they wanted would have meant they were right about me. That I was weak. That being small, being female, being underestimated meant I was less than them. And I refused to let that be true." The judge nodded slowly. "Thank you, Lieutenant." Brandt's lawyer cross-examined for 2 hours. He tried to discredit her testimony, questioned her mental state, suggested she'd fabricated evidence. Harper answered every question with the same calm precision she'd used to survive the detention cell. Finally, he asked, "Isn't it true that you killed multiple people during your escape?" "Yes." "Including Sergeant Morrison?" "Yes." "So you're admitting to murder?" "I'm admitting to self-defense. Morrison was attempting to prevent the escape of 4 unlawfully detained prisoners. He was armed, hostile, and had already committed numerous acts of violence against us. I neutralized the threat." "You shot an unarmed man." "He was reaching for his weapon. I fired first. That's what SEALs are trained to do. Win." Harper leaned forward. "Would you prefer I'd let him kill Dimitri? Let him recapture us? Let him sell us to people who would have used us for propaganda before they killed us anyway?" The lawyer had no response to that. When Harper stepped down, Chen was called next. She testified about her 4 days in captivity, the psychological manipulation, the constant fear. Then Park testified about nerve damage from stress positions. Then Webb, who could barely get through his testimony without breaking down. Each story built on the last, until the weight of evidence was crushing. On day 3, they called Dr. Elena Cross. She walked in wearing an expensive suit, hair perfect, makeup flawless. She looked like she was attending a business conference, not a war crimes trial. Vanderberg didn't waste time. "Dr. Cross, you held a position as senior psychological consultant for Commander Brandt's organization. Is that correct?" "I was an independent contractor providing consulting services." "Consulting services. Can you describe these services?" Cross's lawyer whispered something to her. She nodded. "I decline to answer on the grounds that it may incriminate me." "Then let me be more specific. Did you develop psychological torture protocols for use on detained military personnel?" "I decline to answer." "Did you personally conduct interrogations on Captain Sarah Chen, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, and Sergeant David Park?" "I decline to answer." Vanderberg pulled up a video. Harper recognized it immediately, one of the 9 recordings Cross had shown her in the detention cell. "This is Captain Jennifer Ortiz, captured 8 months ago. Do you recognize her?" Cross's face went pale. "I decline to answer." "The court doesn't need you to answer, Dr. Cross. We have the recordings. All of them. Including the ones where your voice is clearly audible, giving instructions on how to maximize psychological distress." The video played. Ortiz's voice breaking, begging. And in the background, Cross's voice, clinical and detached. "Increase the stress position angle. I want to see how long she can maintain consciousness." The courtroom erupted. Judges called for order. Cross's lawyer demanded the video be excluded, but it was too late. Everyone had seen it. Everyone had heard it. When order was restored, Vanderberg turned to Cross. "Do you still decline to answer?" Cross's hands were shaking. I was following established protocols. Enhanced interrogation techniques approved by... By who? Vanderberg interrupted. Who approved torturing prisoners of war? Cross looked at Brandt. He looked away. I want immunity, Cross said suddenly. I'll tell you everything, but I want full immunity. The judges conferred. Finally, the lead judge spoke. The court will consider a reduced sentence in exchange for complete cooperation, but immunity is not guaranteed. Cross took the deal. What came next shattered everything Harper thought she knew about the operation. Brandt wasn't running this alone, Cross testified. He had backing. Financial backing. Logistical backing. Political protection. From whom? A consortium. Private military contractors, intelligence agencies from 3 different countries, and government officials who wanted access to the intelligence these prisoners could provide. Vanderberg pulled up a document. Is this the consortium you're referring to? Cross nodded. Yes. Harper stared at the names on the screen. 2 were American, 1 was British, 1 was French. All of them were connected to defense contracts, intelligence committees, or military oversight positions. These people knew what was happening? Vanderberg asked. They funded it. They provided the logistics. They approved the targets. Cross's voice was flat, emotionless. Brandt was just the operations manager. The real power was always somewhere else. The courtroom exploded again. This time it took 5 minutes to restore order. When they finally quieted, one of the American officials on the list, a man named Senator Richard Caldwell, stood up in the gallery. This is slander! I've never had any connection to... Sit down, Senator, the lead judge ordered. You'll have your opportunity to testify. But Caldwell was already moving toward the exit. Security stopped him. Harper watched it unfold with a strange sense of detachment. She'd expected Brandt. She'd expected Cross. But she hadn't expected this, that the rot went so deep, reached so high. On day 7, Brandt finally testified. He'd lost his lawyers, lost his composure, and lost any hope of a reduced sentence. I want to make a statement, he said. The judges allowed it. I did what I was told to do. I followed orders. I provided a service that certain people wanted and were willing to pay for. He looked directly at Harper. And I'd do it again. Because in the real world, the weak get exploited. That's not cruelty. That's nature. Harper stood. She wasn't supposed to, but she didn't care. Permission to respond, Your Honor? The judge hesitated, then nodded. Briefly, Harper walked to the center of the courtroom. You called me weak. You called all of us weak. You built your entire operation on the assumption that being small, being female, being captured meant we were less than you. But here's what you didn't understand. Weakness isn't about size or gender or circumstance. Real weakness is needing to break other people to feel powerful. Real weakness is hiding behind orders and money and systems because you don't have the courage to face what you've become. She stepped closer to Brandt. You thought you were nature. But nature doesn't need chains and cells and torture. Nature doesn't need to drug people and sell them like livestock. You're not nature. You're just a coward who convinced himself that cruelty was strength. Brandt's face went purple. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm the person who broke your operation, exposed your network, and made sure 47 people didn't disappear without anyone knowing their names. You're the person who's going to spend the rest of your life in prison thinking about how a 120-pound woman destroyed everything you built. Harper turned back to the judges. I'm done. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. The verdict came 3 days later. Brandt was sentenced to life without parole. Cross received 40 years. Morrison was posthumously convicted, his estate seized to compensate victims. But the real victory came in the other convictions. Senator Caldwell was arrested. 2 defense contractors were indicted. A British intelligence official resigned and fled to a country without extradition. The consortium was broken. Harper stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters, cameras, questions she didn't want to answer. Chen and Park stood with her. Webb was still in medical care, but he'd sent a message saying he was proud of them. Lieutenant Kane, how does it feel to know justice was served? Harper thought about Dimitri, about the 9 videos Cross had shown her, about the 47 names on the ledger who'd never get to testify. It doesn't feel like justice, she said honestly. It feels like accountability. Justice would mean none of this ever happened. But accountability means it's harder for it to happen again. What's next for you? I'm going back to my team. I'm going back to work. After everything you've been through? Because of everything I've been through. Harper looked directly at the camera. Someone once told me that being underestimated is the best disguise for a weapon. I spent 72 hours proving that's true. Now I'm going to spend the rest of my career making sure no one else has to. 3 months later, Harper stood in Volgograd, Russia, at a small apartment building that had seen better decades. She knocked on door 412. A woman answered, mid-30s, with the same eyes as Dimitri. Yes? My name is Harper Kane. I knew your ex-husband. The woman's face changed. You're the American. The one he helped. Yes. Come in. The apartment was small but clean. Photos of Katya covered every surface, a little girl with dark hair and her father's smile. She's at school, Dimitri's ex-wife said. Her name was Irina. She asks about him constantly. She doesn't understand why he's gone. He died saving my life and the lives of 3 other people. He died making sure the people who hurt him couldn't hurt anyone else. Harper pulled out an envelope. Inside was a letter she'd written, a Medal of Honor citation she'd personally submitted, and a bank account number with enough money to pay for Katya's education through university. He told me to tell her he remembered how to be brave. I wanted to make sure she knows exactly what that meant. Irina read the letter, tears streaming down her face. He was a good man once. Before all of this. Before Brandt. I thought he'd forgotten who he was. He remembered when it mattered most. When Katya came home from school, Harper told her about her father. Not the whole truth. 8-year-olds didn't need to know about torture and trafficking. But enough truth. About courage. About sacrifice. About a man who chose to be brave when bravery cost him everything. Katya cried, but she also smiled. My papa was a hero? Your papa was a hero, Harper confirmed. 6 months after the tribunal, Harper was back in Virginia, back with her team, back to the work that had defined her adult life. But something had changed. She moved through the world differently now. Quieter. More certain. Commander Riggs called her into his office one afternoon. Kane, we need to talk about your next assignment. Sir? JSOC wants you on a task force. Anti-trafficking, specifically targeting operations like Brandt's. They're calling it Operation Broken Chain. Harper sat down. They want me because of what happened. They want you because you understand the enemy. You've seen how they operate, how they think, what their vulnerabilities are. Riggs paused. And because you proved that being underestimated is tactical advantage. I'll do it. You don't want to think about it? No, sir. This is exactly what I need to do.
A year later, Operation Broken Chain had dismantled 3 more trafficking networks, recovered 18 prisoners, and put 47 people in prison. Harper led every mission, and every time someone called her weak or small or assumed she was just support personnel, she smiled, because they were right where she wanted them. Chen made colonel and started training other pilots in survival and escape techniques.
Park recovered full use of his hands and wrote a book about psychological resilience that became required reading for special operations forces worldwide. Webb struggled longer, but eventually found his footing as a consultant for hostage recovery operations. They stayed in touch. Monthly video calls, annual reunions, the kind of bond that only forms when you've survived the unsurvivable together. And every March 15th, Harper visited Dimitri's grave. Someone had arranged for his body to be returned to Russia, buried properly, with full military honors despite his complicated history. She'd bring flowers and tell him what Operation Broken Chain had accomplished that year. Tell him about Katya, who was thriving in school, who wanted to be a doctor, who kept his photograph on her desk. This year, she brought something else. A framed photograph of all 47 people who'd been trafficked through Brandt's network. Some had been recovered alive. Some had died in captivity. But all of them had names now. All of them had stories. All of them mattered. Harper knelt beside the grave. "We found the last one 2 weeks ago. Marine Corps Captain David Reyes, held in Syria for 18 months. He's home now. They're all accounted for. Every single one." She touched the headstone. "You made that possible, Dimitri. You gave us the evidence that broke everything open." The wind picked up, cold and sharp, and Harper stood. She'd been called weak her entire life. Too small for the SEALs, too female for special operations, too soft for the real work of war. But she'd learned something in that detention cell, chained to a wall, facing impossible odds. Strength wasn't about size or gender or circumstance. Strength was about refusing to break when breaking would be easier. Strength was about protecting others even when you could barely protect yourself. Strength was about standing up when staying down would keep you safe. And most importantly, strength was about proving that underestimating someone based on how they looked was the last mistake you'd ever make. Harper Kane had been called a weakling by men who thought cruelty was power. Those men were in prison now, and she was still standing. That was all the proof of strength anyone would ever need.